Alright, another draft physics science. um, anyway, comment video mostly, and questions, but they're not questions about physics. They're questions about one's authority to have an opinion, to engage in discussion, question something, critique it even. And so apparently you have to have a qualification for that. So anyway, what are your credentials? Um, so again, I'll argue, yeah, I don't have any professional credentials, technically. I mean, I did professional work in different mechanical fields, and all of those fields involve physics, electricity and heat and just understanding how parts have to work together to create a functioning machine. Friction, lots of things involved. It's practical physics, not extremely technical physics. And then beyond that, I've done lots of reading, and before you got to YouTube, and then I've done lots of watching of college lectures. And so my experience isn't common. I have more than a common person's understanding of the mechanics. I certainly have more than a common person's understanding of electrodynamics, magnetism, lots of stuff like that. So I don't have a very strong mathematics background beyond taking trigonometry in high school. So yes, I do have some limitations in doing the very strangled equations that have formalized, put into formulas, how the variables interact, and what can be expected when you have a system working. And I don't have any, there's no reason that I'm not hostile to that mathematics. I'm just hostile to the idea that the mathematics is physics, because it isn't. That's even a model, because it isn't. It's just a description of relationships, a very technical description that doesn't include, in my opinion, the important why it happens. It's kind of like just describing a human being based on the fact of how tall they are, how many pounds they weigh, and say, there, I've covered it. That's a human being. No, it's more to that. So anyway, but yes, beyond that, I'm reasonable. I think I'm logical, and I think I have a rather extensive knowledge base, fact base, if you want to call it. I've read encyclopedias. I understand the concepts. I understand what I'm arguing substantially. Certainly, there's some things I didn't anticipate existing as explanations for certain things. Certainly, there's gaps in my knowledge. I don't think anybody could be knowledgeable about all the entire field of physics. No one has credentials to cover every single discipline and every subject. But yeah, I'm reasonably educated, and I'm a fair cop. What's your credentials to ask me the question, by the way? What the hell do you know, Mr. Pink Icon? Mr. Pink, little pink and orange. What? I don't even know what it is an icon of. I'm not going to your website to have your channel page to see, but it looks like little fairy stuff. What are your credentials, fairy person? Alright, anyway. Then a completely dumb question. Can I see a link to your work, please? Well, in the last 200 videos, it's always in the description, the link to the website, where there's a written description of what I've stated in the videos. My work is these videos. That's the argument. 500 videos where I started with a particle theory of gravity, and that's all I had. and I migrated it all the way from a particle theory of gravity to an explanation of all the electrodynamics, the magnetism, electricity, the strong and weak nuclear forces. It's all been wrapped up in one big giant truth. And apparently you're hostile to it, but you can't make any arguments against it. So yeah, bring an argument next time, or not. Or not a next time, please. So this comment I didn't really understand. I'll read some of it maybe. Zach and others, as usual, haters. I find Jimmy is quite intelligent. I find he lives in your head rent free. Pisme, oh shit, I just watched video pick up the hair. Oops. I don't know what the heck. Fuck it. I'll be deleting that. whatever the fuck that is. Maximilian is just kind of commenting. He likes the video format anyway. Okay, Bob Hicks, 2 comments. We had a little snow last night. There was snow on top of the picnic table, but not a bit on the ground under these things. The snow was pushed down to the table just as it is, and the table we're just as it and the table were pushed towards the earth. Yes, second, I'm pretty sure Alan Girth, in his own words, claims that after inflation the universe was about the size of a basketball, or maybe even a golf ball. I'm just going by the images. Okay, whenever they show this picture of the universe now, the new modern picture of the Big Bang, it's a linear picture of time. Okay, so time going this way, and there's a little point, then a huge expansion, and then it goes. So there's no basketball. So I don't think you're correct. I think that's crazy. I think that you're being a little bit kind of silly, because from the singularity from which it started, reasonable estimates of how much you can compress the entire universe, you might be able to get it down to Earth size, but a pea, I don't think so. It's evened out for about 300,000 years. There's no point even talking about that kind of specific nonsense, but I think that's just silly. Of course it's evened out over 300,000 years, but that's nothing. We're talking about 13 billion years. It began as a rapid expansion. The whole argument is about how rapid it could have been, and the fact that it had to be rapid really early, and it had to be so rapid that light couldn't keep up with it for the cosmic background radiation to be seen. That is why cosmic background, cosmic CMB, I don't know what that is, was so evenly homogenized. Well, again, that doesn't explain it, because I'm sorry. Okay, you have to explain the speed of light. The radiation moves the speed of light. So you have to explain how the radiation couldn't get past us. That somehow we move so little, or so much, that the radiation couldn't keep up. That radiation from other bodies couldn't get to us, and the radiation from us couldn't get to them. And that means something had to expand faster, much, much faster than the speed of light. I don't buy it. Well, then why do you bring it up? But that's what Guth's theory. Who cares? Why do I care about this guy? Why do I care about any of these people when the idea is on its face unfounded by any kind of facts? There's no evidence. They're just making up a story based on a few outcomes, and that's all. They have an outcome and they say what caused the outcome, and they can literally make up anything, and that's what they're doing. They're literally making stuff up, and you're saying it's worthy of discussion, and I'm saying I couldn't give a rat's ass in the first place, because I don't think that's interesting physics. Trying to figure out what happened 13 billion years ago isn't going to do us a damn bit of good. It's of no use. Understanding the mechanics, that's of use. All right, one of the things, understanding it in some sort of way that you can't find a parallel in anything that's happening now, where there's nothing in the universe happening now that gives any indication that matter can all of a sudden just expand at any speed, because space will just fill in the gap somehow. Anyway, all right, so Mad Flea Willing, who promised a video but pussy out. So I'll read his stupid comment, but you know, there's no substance to it. One of the things I've noticed is if you try to beat people over the head with the truth, so again, he thinks he has the truth, they usually become belligerent and actually become more entrenched in their beliefs. Well, yeah, when some obnoxious, Jesus freak comes knocking at the door, they do seem impervious to a logical argument. Whereas if you take the subtle approach, what means being lying, I guess, it's usually more effective. I've tried to be rational, I doubt that, and to use logic and rationality under the assumption that you would submit to logic. Well, what logic have you used? You're under a name I don't even recognize. Who are you? And what arguments have you made? I don't see any in this post. I didn't see any in your previous post. So what are your logical arguments I haven't addressed as being crap? You're just so full of yourself, you stupid cunt. Anyway, under the assumptions that you would submit to logic and you would admit when you do or do not have preeminence on an issue by virtue of how reasoned your arguments are. A really long run-on sentence. I'll put a period there just for the hell of it. It's not my obligation, to. I certainly have admitted in circumstances where I can't make an argument to undo your fantasy. I can't prove you wrong, and you certainly haven't proven me wrong in any way whatsoever. I ask you to provide hard evidence of light bending. Where's your hard evidence? You don't provide any. Okay, you have no hard evidence of general relativity. As I've pointed out, the only evidence is in a relationship between velocity and time dilation, not space-time. Just that velocity causes it. Causes clocks to break. Move the clock fast, the clock doesn't tell the right time. That's all that's proven, okay, to be a reality. You don't have proof of any other more expansive theoretical notions. So again, where's your say you made these logical arguments? Again, a logical argument is having facts and going, here's fact A, here's fact B, they point to fact C. That's what logic is. So where's your fact A and your fact B beyond, well, the New York Times wouldn't have published Eddington's results unless they were rock solid, when, of course, the New York Times had no way to scrutinize his results. No way at all. Anyway, let me go on. Let's see. Smith reasoned your arguments are, and by what epistemological standards you apply to reach your conclusions. This isn't about an epistemology. It's just about the credibility of facts and the hardness of evidence. Now, I've pointed out over and over and over again that all I'm asking you people to concede is there's an open door because your evidence is weak. It's not close the door, evolution has been proven evidence. And I've used evolution as an example because evolution is proven by so many different angles of evidence, completely independent corroboration. And you lack that for light bending. You lack that for any of the general relativity proofs. And so, your evidence is really weak. There's no strong evidence of space-time being a reality. There's no strong evidence for the existence of anything called an electrical field or a magnetic field, an ether of any kind. There's no hard evidence of any ethers, bent space, electric fields, or magnetic fields. There's absolutely no evidence that any of that crap exists that's anything like strong. And yet you keep talking as if you have this logical process you've done. I'm claiming you haven't done a logical process. You've just jumped on a bandwagon. They say so. I like that story. I'll jump on the wagon. But what critical thinking have you done? Fuck. Alright. Standards you apply to reach your conclusions. That's a period, and then he starts the next sentence with and. I'm no good at grammar, but I can see shitty grammar too. I can see when other people know nothing about grammar also. And what I have learned is that you aren't interested in any of that. So again, another lie about what I'm interested in. I'm keenly interested if you can provide evidence of something. Keenly interested. Now, none of you have done that. None of you have provided any kind of DNA evidence, blood evidence, any kind of hard evidence. You just have a bunch of testimony, story evidence. Well, here's a story that could be true. This could be the story, okay? Is that, OJ had a twin brother that nobody knew about, and I mean, you can make a story fit the facts, but isn't that just making it up? And I've pointed out how there's so many things that just look like made-up stories, right? Bent space looks like God of the Gaps. I don't know what causes it, so let's blame it on this space thing. Doesn't dark matter look like just a contrivance? The math doesn't work. Something's not right somewhere. Let's just put some, dark matter glue on it. Isn't that what it looks like? You're saying it doesn't look like that? Then make an argument how it doesn't look like that. Because that's how it looks. It looks like it's made up. Fuck. In any way. Yeah, so again, I just fuck you in this accusation that I'm unwilling, okay, to be tried. To have you test my arguments and to be tested. Because I'm not. Alright? I'm reading your fucking lame shit comment, fuckhead. And what are you doing? You're wasting your comment time on this crap, okay, instead of actually making an argument. Because you don't have a fucking argument. Alright. And you're not interested in a rational discussion. Well, again, your rational discussion is premised on, you're wrong and don't you know it? That's not a rational discussion, fuckhead. Jesus. So I'm going to switch tactics. Oh, cool. And go for more of a Q&A format where I ask you questions. Well, brilliant. And based on how you answer those questions, I will decide what new questions to ask. Wow. Yes, asking questions is great, actually. But I don't think you're going to do this, pay any attention to the answer part. I don't think that's going to happen. And you're certainly not going to answer my questions. I mean, my questions are, how is the two-slit experiment more interesting than the single-slit experiment in terms of a phenomenon? Making two photons with a single slit seems to me to be incredibly more interesting than two photons being created from one photon in the double slit. So why don't you explain to me how the single slit matches wave mechanics? Why don't you explain to me how it does without using a Huygens gimmick that you don't use in the double slit, where you don't even pay attention to how wide the slit is? Why don't you explain how it only subtly matches a little bit of water waves, okay, light, we're talking about light now, and that the pattern isn't even graduated the way it's supposed to be. There's no wave, okay, there's a square wave. It's not supposed to be a square by the math's predictions. So why in light is it a square wave when it's supposed to be a sine wave? The gradation of the light. Have you answered any of those questions? I've asked a ton of questions about the lensing images. Have you answered any of them? Do you really expect me to believe that every time there's gravitational lensing in the universe, it happens in a circumstance where the other object is 5 billion light years away, and there's nothing else in that whole cone of space? Because the truth is, we should see, if there's lensing, if there's gravitational lensing, we should see some objects that are incredibly close to the thing with where the lens is, and we should see a huge optical flare of light. Huge. That's what lenses do. It's a law of lenses. Why are the laws of lenses not obeyed by gravitational lensing? Have you answered any of these questions? No. Question 1. Do you believe that your theory will gain widespread acceptance within 1,000 years' time? Well, do you believe that the silly notion of Jehovah and Mohammed and King David, do you think any of that rubbish is going to die in the next 1,000 years? I think it will. I really do. I think it's going to be killed when the rest of the people are killed, but I mean, but theoretically, the evidence is so strong that eventually truth will win. That's my brain is saying it has to. You know, the intellectuals won't drop this ball. They will pick it up eventually and be rational. They'll realize that they must live in a world of reasonable people. And I'd make the same argument here. It's only reasonable to go back and fact check your assumptions. It's only reasonable to sit there and say, was there somewhere in this process where we might have made a mistake? And even Einstein was doing it. Just a few years before his death, he was lamenting that he may have been entirely on the wrong track because he didn't like the mess of it, the sloppiness of it. None of it seemed to fit. And you don't even take his testimony seriously because you're such fucking fanatics. So yes, will you fanatics let go of your stupid, mistaken understandings of reality and accept the kind of unpleasant truth that it's a deterministic, robotic universe and there's no such thing as anything creative beyond the effects of mechanical cause and effect. What is the likelihood of this occurring? So you ask the same question twice. Yeah. What, you want to bet? Is this a horse race or something? You have some sort of insider knowledge about what horse is going to win the race or something? You know, I predicted when I started this it should take a few months. Okay, I was wrong. You're belligerently retarded. Physics is a religion, and the stone-headed, moronic, cement-headed, brick-headed, closed, myopic-minded people like yourself are evidence of how hard it's going to be to make a few arguments about how, look, you made a couple of mistakes. Okay, this bending space-time bullshit is bullshit. This field idea was silly. It's a mechanical universe. Something has to transmit between things. There's no ESP. There's no special forces. There's no special ethers. Yeah. Dark matter is an invention. You know, it may be a possibility, but there's no evidence for it. Huygens is a nice trick, but there's no evidence for it. Well, anyway. Will it require a paradigm shift? I hate that fucking word, to tell you the truth. No, it'll require that the right president gets shot at the right time or something, you know, or gets a blowjob or whatever the thing is. It'll require a certain little chain of events, like Eddington getting published in the New York Times. Okay, it'll require some kind of thing that happens and that it just catches fire and then everybody just says, oh, something like that. But this time they'll be right instead of wrong. Okay, so maybe it'll be like the Galileo thing, you know, lots of resistance, but with every passing year from the point he said it, everybody just started to get it. Like, oh yeah, it really has to work that way. So anyway, in terms of how evidence is weighed and how truth in science is established. So I'm saying there's no, you know, there's actually no methodology, method to what science now does in terms of how it weighs the evidence. It doesn't weigh it. It's pop science. It's pop culture deciding what gets in the science publications. It's incredibly, there's no real professionalism in science anymore. They're all just performers. Okay, they're all selling, either they're trying to patent a technology that they can make millions on, or they're trying to be presenters, or something like that. But there's just nobody, there's no integrity to the science, and that the scientists are afraid to critique each other. There's no mechanism for that process to take place. They don't have meetings anymore, They just don't do it anymore. They don't sit there and argue physics. So yeah, there's no standards, and as I've pointed that out with evidence that you ignore. I show you an article that says there's a 25% margin of error in an experiment that's measuring something very, very fine, just tiny percentages in difference, and then they title the article, "We've proven the speed of gravity," when they couldn't have possibly done it with a 25% margin of error. It's insane, and it's an insane piece of science, and it's published as science. And I've shown other articles where the whole article doesn't make any sense, and then the images are completely non-coherent to the article. I've shown videos where they create their little animations and their other fakery to present it as if they have something called hard evidence when they have something incredibly weak. I just saw that El Kamadi guy do this crap with his stupid light video, and he showed that MIT bullshit where they photograph light going across a bottle, and it's just a fraud. Okay, I mean, they didn't photograph photons moving through anything. First off, the photons they're photographing are coming out of the thing. They're not actually doing the moving going this way. They're actually coming towards us through the material. And the whole thing isn't engineered. It's not a real event. Nothing really happened. In terms of they photographed a bunch of independent beams of light and just photographed them at different moments. It wasn't one stream of photon. I mean, I'll just say it's just fake, oversold, completely exaggerated as to what has been accomplished. And I pointed that out, and you're just going to keep talking as if, no, I'm the crooked one, and they're doing something of such high integrity. How dare I, impugn the character of this science? The science has no character. They don't deal with any of the problems caused by the assumptions they state as truths. Light is a wave, except it's not. Fuck. Except they have nothing it's waving in. What's it waving in? What's it a wave made of? Magic, feely stuff. Do you believe that your theory is a work in progress? Well, obviously the whole fucking channel is called Draft Physics, for fuck's sake. DraftScience, actually, but the website's Draft Physics. That's what it's called. You don't think that draft is another word for work in progress? Or is it perfect? So these are my two choices. It's either just kind of a mess and nothing's coherent and totally undone and totally stupid, or it's perfect. It can't be something in between. That is, as I just pointed out earlier, something I started with one idea, okay, first provoked by the silly explanations of the two-slit experiment, just too silly. That led me to thinking about particles and gravity, and then I got back to light again. And the whole process has happened in videos. The whole development of the theory right before any eyes that would want to pay attention. Fucking asshole. Or is it perfect in its current form? It's substantially complete in the sense that the only thing left are the meticulous long formula details. Alright, the preposterous adding up every single influence when you're calculating what a 1 zillion electrons and protons are doing in a substance at any one time, influenced by, outside of those particularities. just doing the basic mechanics, yeah, it's like 85–90% complete in terms of it covers the basic causes and effects. The functions are 80 or 90% complete. What are you doing personally to improve the theory right now? I don't even understand what these people, what am I doing personally as opposed to unpersonally? I just, what value could this possibly be? I'm making videos, obviously. Obviously I spend, people don't really appreciate it, but, I have the word think up there. But thinking is work. And especially when you're thinking about things that are complicated, and there's a lot of moving parts at one time. It's like following a lot of juggling stuff. I could have all of the little Mickey Mouse Club characters, 10 of them, and I could juggle them. And you might say, oh, that's goofy, and there's Mini-Me, yeah, there's Mini-Me, and there's, whatever, Baby Mouse. You might be able to catch glimpses glimpses of them, but you can't follow it all, and it's difficult, and that's what some of this is doing. Is you've got to recognize that every time you make a subtle change in gravity over here, you could be making a huge change in magnetism over here, and all that. Well, anyway, it's not that simple. I'm saying what I've tripped over is simple. Okay, just thinking about particle and trying to make it work, and it's easy to make it work. I found it's a lot easier than one would think from all the naysayers saying, oh, it's the most dismissed theory in the history of physics. No, it's the most ignored, the most stepped over, the most trivially thought about. And I did more than just trivially think about it, and that's the difference. But that's all the difference. Alright, oh, this is going to bother me. I can see this next sentence is not good. What key characteristics distinguish it from a religious belief? Well, what key characteristics distinguish evolution from a religious belief? Oh, that's right, evidence. Consistency with evidence. Yeah, I'm clearly arguing that all the evidence, that is, Maxwell's equations especially, all the observed phenomenon, are completely consistent with this mechanism being true. And unlike your theory, that doesn't explain how magnetism works, go show me, link me to your good explanation of how magnetism is caused and effect. Show me the cause and effect video or lecture for magnetism. I can link you to one of my videos on magnetism, and I'll say that mine's going to have a lot more explanation of physics than theirs is. So the consistency with the evidence is the evidence. The theory has to work. I'm saying to you, show me how it doesn't work. I explained to you how it creates magnetism. I explained how it creates time dilation. I explained how it creates the forces that move electrons towards each other and away from each other. They don't attract, they just anti-repel. But anyway, I've done that. Consistent with the observed evidence. And it's your obligation, if you're saying it's wrong or it isn't consistent, to explain how it's not consistent. But what do I have to do to prove it's not religion? I just have to point out how it's consistent with evidence, where God theories isn't consistent with anything but a story made up. Go ahead and try to make up a story. Okay? Anybody can make up a story about God and heaven, because it's not a place we can access. I'm telling you a story about the real world evidence, and why the evidence comes out the way it does. Now you try to make a fake story that fits that. Try to make a fake story that fits the evidence of gravity, a unification theory that fits gravity, fits magnetism, fits electricity, and fits the nuclear forces. Go ahead and do that. See how just try it for the fun of it, to see if you can make up a fake story without creating a leprechaun or something. I didn't create any leprechauns. I created 5 rules of the function of polarized bits. 5 simple left-right rules. That's it. Might only be 4. That's it. That's what proves the theory. I take less elements that have less power. So there's no leprechaun with a shillelagh, no magical bent space that does this, this, and this, no magical forces that make things wave, nothing special. Just 4 mechanical processes and explain everything. I'm saying I don't think you can do that and be wrong. Yeah, I don't think it's possible. Einstein only did one thing, gravity. and it's hugely inconsistent with the other theories. It ain't that easy, unifying. It's the wrong way to say it. I think it's damn easy. It's just that you fucking pigheads are so close-minded to anything but your fucking your orthodoxy. You're the religious kooks who won't even look at the evidence. You just dismiss it. You just say, oh, I have a raindrop argument that this, sweep that away. It's not like raindrops, therefore it can't be right. You dismiss things with wrong assumptions by like Hathaway, by creating consequences that aren't part of the theory. All right, anyway. Religious belief like reincarnation or immaculate conception or miracles. So obviously I'm not saying any of that stuff. So again, point out the part where there was something immaculate conception. Something miraculous has to happen. You're saying to me that the fact that 2 things come in like this, and this thing leaves this way, and this thing leaves that way, is miraculous? Because that's the most bizarre thing my theory suggests as an event. Okay? This. Ooh, magnify goes this way, this goes that way. That's the most miraculous event that takes place in my physics. And you're comparing that to gods having sex with mortals. Fuck you for that. Why should anyone else believe your theory? Well, as I just pointed out, because it's consistent with all the evidence and it unifies physics, and it's actually a physical theory of physics. It's physics with physical in it. Yay! Asshole. Not magical fields of fun and virtual photons and dark matter and photons that split in 2 and interfere with themselves. Yeah, it doesn't have that fucking crap in it. Alright. Anyway. Anybody believe your theory is different than and distinct from such a religious belief? Again, if you can't see the difference between something entirely made up that doesn't fit the evidence and something entirely constructed by forming itself to the evidence, actually being obliged to fit the evidence. I look forward to hearing your responses to all or any of these 3 carefully constructed. If this is your argument of a careful construct of how you're going to debunk a theory, is by merely say, you're a shitty messenger, I don't want to hear it, and I only have to debunk you by saying your theory is made up. When every theory is made up, by the way, in that sense. But that you're going to ignore the fact that it actually provides physically reasonable explanations for observed phenomenon, rather than God of the gap, who knows, magical processes, Huygens, Heisenberg, dark matter, dark energy, bent space, magical processes. That's all you have. I'm giving you physics. So who sounds more religious if you go based on, like I said, you're just going to say something like, well, the geometry tells the matter what to do, and then the matter bends the geometry. And that you're saying a fair cop with a rational brain, if you made an AI, he'd say, "Oh yeah, that's just fascinating. Great explanation." No, not so much. Alright, so I think that's it. That's enough for this video. Like I said, I should play some of those. There was one on electricity, and it was called, and he brought up Tesla. It's one of these whatever BBC shows, and it was just so funny. But it's just this glowing crap about Tesla and AC, and Tesla's contribution again was not very big. Okay, it really wasn't that significant. A little tweak to Einstein's motors. He did get the patent for it, so yes, it was kind of important in terms of that he had this motor technology. But AC motors did have limitations in the sense that you could only run them at the speed of the cycles. So they weren't very functional in a lot of ways, so there's a lot of disadvantages to AC motors. Certainly all the big motors weren't AC motors. But anyway, I mean, Edison obviously was the one, well, obviously. Yeah, long before Tesla got here, they'd already invented the generator. So I mean, it just, and it's basically an AC motor, So it's not like Tesla invented it. It's just I just find it so irritating. But the funny part was, then he went on to Marconi, and he didn't talk about Tesla at all. So he talks about Tesla and AC current, and he never talks about Tesla in the context of Marconi and the transmission of radio waves, which was the thing that Tesla ended up getting a patent on, whatever the word is, posthumously. Not he wasn't dead, but just because they kind of decided they gave Marconi too wide a reach of a patent. But anyway, I mean, so it just gets into a bunch of technical stuff. But clearly, Tesla would say that was his most important work, and it was just kind of funny. He didn't bring it up at all. That Tesla's wacky, I'm not going to just send a message to you overseas. I'm going to send you zillions of volts of electricity through the atmosphere, and that was just stupid. Very unrealistic. Anyway, so I think that's enough. Mostly. I mean, there's so many things to critique. I mean, I was just playing the part where, in this stupid light one, it's a much poorer documentary. He was just getting to the part of Maxwell's equations when I stopped watching, and making the point that, the real magic of Maxwell was to notice that light, because it's going the same speed as magnetism, must be an electromagnetic phenomenon, and it should have been exactly the opposite conclusion. The conclusion should have been that magnetism is just an invisible form of light radiation. So instead of making light into a wave of fields, which again Maxwell just used that because he was an ether guy. It doesn't change his mathematics any. The mathematics is going to be the same whether you have a field of a manipulated field or whether you have particles. They'll do exactly the same thing. And the real important thing that Maxwell figured out, definitively, was the straight line nature of that field's movement. So it moved just like light does, in the sense that it moves in straight lines, and not wave-like at all, really. But that was just one of those simple mistakes, right? Here you have a point where you can go left or you can go right. And it's like Einstein on thinking about photons. Are they matter or are they force? And he chooses to make them matter, make them bendable. When no, they're force and they're not bendable. And the same thing happened with Maxwell. Maxwell's sitting there and he's got two choices, like Ben Franklin, plus minus. Chose the wrong one. You're willing to admit that now, but, well, you really don't have a choice but to admit it. But Maxwell did the same thing. The realization should have been is that light and magnetism are forces, and so is gravity. They're all the same thing. They just have a different expression of a force. One of them is at a frequency, that's the electromagnetic spectrum that includes this little tiny bit that we can see. And then magnetism is polarized, that is, the two types of bit are filtered, and so you have a yes, polarized. So the intensity of the force can be magnified by the magnet, because it won't be push-pull. It won't be AC anymore. It'll be all one or the other. And gravity is obviously mixed, and that's why it's weak, because it's push-pulling. Alright, so enough. So, till next time. And such, and so forth and whatnot. Hopefully everything went okay. Yeah, I'm still buggy on this software, but gotta get the frame rates better and some things better, but in theory it's working pretty well. So, till next time.